Hi, my name is Fasahat Salim. I'm a game designer at Crytek UK, and I'm here for Homefront The Revolution.
What were your guys' goals heading into this new game?
So we wanted to focus on some of the cool stuff that was done in the original Homefront, and we wanted to build upon it. So we were really interested in the premise and the guerrilla warfare aspect of things. And so basically we're taking that guerrilla warfare pillar and we're taking it to a massive scale using the CryEngine technology that we have and taking it open world.
For those people who didn't play the original, talk a little about the concept and how not far-fetched it is based on some of the historical things that they researched.
Okay, yeah, so it is a pretty crazy worst-case scenario, but the US has been invaded and occupied by North Korea, and the idea is that in Homefront The Revolution, we pick up the game at, 4 years into this occupation. So it's a mature occupation now, and with Homefront The Revolution, we're basically introducing the player to a Philadelphia like they haven't seen before, basically.
When it comes to Philadelphia, talk about the history of that city and how that plays a role in the occupation.
Yeah, so obviously Philadelphia it's an iconic city as far as independence goes. It's quite literally the birthplace of US independence. It's where the Declaration of Independence was signed. Till this day, it has like symbolic icons such as Independence Hall, the Liberty Bell. So these are all things that we felt was a very strong and potent subject matter for Homefront The Revolution. Obviously, the Korean People's Army, or the KPA, have set up their capital in Philadelphia, which signifies a massive power shift with the USA now a fallen power, and the Koreans obviously taking over as the main occupiers and superior force. So as far as the narrative goes, it kind of called out for an interesting and significantly different premise. So
for those who didn't play the original game, explain how the hell North Korea took over the United States.
So again, it's a completely worst case scenario. This is obviously fictionally it's something that we haven't come across too much in the first-person shooter genre, because usually most of the narrative that's prevalent in the first-person genre is usually you play as a hardened military soldier and you're globetrotting the world, you're shooting bad guys in the face. With this narrative, the fight's been brought to the USA. It's a different take on it. All of a sudden the fight is in your own backyard. It's a familiar battleground, but at the same time, it's been changed completely by the KPA, so it's very alien at the same time. So yeah, it's an interesting space to play in.
When it comes to Philadelphia, talk a little bit about how this city has evolved over the 4 years of occupation.
Sure, yeah. So obviously Philadelphia, like I mentioned, it's a city built on independence. So with the KPA occupation coming in, they've broken it down into several different districts. Each of these districts has its own themes. They have a green zone, which is basically where all of the key landmarks are, and it's basically set for the opulent KPA high officials. They're the ones who've taken over this space as residential areas and offices. Then we've got these ghettos that they've set up, which they're trying to push the general population into, because the KPA do not have the manpower to police the whole city. So they've pushed the population into these areas so they can keep an eye on them easier. They've got drone technology that's basically on the ground, looking out for any trouble. Anyone who steps out of line, they're dealt with severely. And then we've got the red zone, which is kind of like the wastelands, the abandoned lands, where the KPA aren't focusing too much of their attention. So it's kind of like a free-for-all area. We've got these 3 different zones, and each of these zones has its own identity and districts, and it's an expansive open world, and each of these areas has its own identity and it's unique. So there's a lot for the player to explore in Philadelphia.